A lot to talk about right now with the man of the hour. He is the Republican senator from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham. He is the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He also sits on the Senate Appropriations, Foreign Relations, and Budget Committee. Senator, it's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Good to see you this morning. First, let's talk Ukraine for a moment.
Yeah.
Does the president have something to worry about in terms of that phone call he had with the leader of Ukraine?
I think every president would have a lot to worry about if this phone call is handled the way they're talking about. Can you imagine future presidents having a phone call with a foreign leader and it winds up going to Congress? If that's not an executive privilege moment, I don't know what would be. So the foreign minister of the Ukraine said there's no pressure. They've got the money. Nothing's happened. But here's something that really did surprise me. Joe Biden said everybody's looked at this and found nothing. Who is everybody? Nobody's looked at the Ukraine and the Bidens. Nobody's looked at the role the Ukraine played in the 2016 election. Do you think the media in America would really look at it and report on it if there was something bad for the Bidens or they unduly interfered in the 2016 election? So here's what I'm calling for. I'm calling for somebody in the Justice Department to look at all things Ukraine. We've looked at all things Russia and Trump, his family, everything about his family, every transaction between the Trump campaign and Russia. Now it's time to see whether or not the Ukrainians released information regarding Manafort, who is Trump's campaign manager. What relationships, if any, did the Biden world have to the Ukraine? What role, if any, did the Ukraine play in the 2016 election? So nobody's looked at this, but somebody should. So I'm hoping the Department of Justice will look at the Biden-Ukraine connection like we looked at the Trump-Russia connection.
So you're calling for an investigation
Absolutely.
by the DOJ into Ukraine and its dealings into the United States?
Can you imagine if this was the Trump family doing business like this? So, I like Joe Biden. I like him a lot. But you can't have it both ways here.
Yeah.
They've done everything but turned the Trump world upside down. When it comes to this president, there are no rules, including a phone call. Everything is fair game when it comes to Trump. There are no privileges. So what I'm asking for is for us to take some time and effort to look at what the Ukraine may have done in the 2016 election. What role, if any, did the Bidens have to the Ukraine? Was it proper? Was it not? I promise you the American media is not going to look at it. I'm hoping somebody at the Department of Justice will do for the Biden-Ukraine connection what we did for the Trump-Russia connection.
In fact, Peter Schweitzer says that the American media is trying to turn what was a Biden scandal into a Trump scandal.
Well, I hope Mr. Barr doesn't allow that to happen. I hope there's enough smoke here. There's enough concern about did the Ukraine dump information into the American political system, legal system regarding Manafort and others? Was there a relationship between the vice president's family and the Ukraine business world that was inappropriate? I don't know. Somebody other than me needs to look at it, and I sure as hell don't trust the media to get to the bottom of it.
I want to move on to Iran, but before I do, I know you have some important meetings today.
Yeah.
You're going to be meeting with Mr. Erdogan. You're going to be meeting with the leadership of Pakistan. Anything you want to tell us about in terms of your upcoming meetings, what you'd like to see? Yeah,
Turkey is an important ally. If they activate the S-400 that they bought from Russia, it will sever our relationship. I hope we can find an alternative to the S-400. But we need Turkey to help us in Syria. We need Turkey to stabilize Syria, to help us stabilize Syria. I'd like to get them back in the F-35 program. They're a strategic ally. We've created a problem for Turkey with the YPG Kurds, who in their eyes are a terrorist organization. So I'm going to meet with President Erdogan to make sure that we can salvage this relationship. It's very important. And you want to end the war in Afghanistan? So do I. It will never end without Pakistan. So Pakistan's put pressure on the Taliban. If they keep putting pressure on the Taliban, where there are no longer sanctuaries in Pakistan, it will make it very hard on the Taliban to keep this war going in Afghanistan. So a free trade agreement between the United States and Turkey and the United States and Pakistan can bring these countries on our side in a way to be very beneficial to our foreign policy.
The president's trying to get as many trade agreements as he can as possible right now. Let's talk Iran for a moment, because we know at this point that it didn't look like, based on the fingerprints left, that it was the Houthi rebels in terms of hitting the Saudi Arabian oil fields. What kind of a response do you want to see from the United States?
One that will restore the relationship on our terms, restore deterrence. The Ayatollah is a religious Nazi. When he says death to Israel, he means it. You know, Rocket Man is sort of a mafia state. The Iranian regime is run by religious extremists. They have a desire to purify Islam, to destroy Israel, and take over the Mideast religiously and economically. They're bad people. They shoot their own people down in the streets to maintain power. So don't underestimate who we're dealing with here. This is not about oil. It is about nuclear weapons. Trump has done more to punish Iran than any president since Reagan. But this attack on Saudi Arabia is an act of war. If we give them a pass, everybody in the region believes that the Iranians will eventually break out and get a nuclear weapon, and the Arabs are going to go buy one, and you're going to have a nuclear-armed Mideast if you don't stop Iran now. So what did Reagan do when the Iranians act out? They attacked ships. Reagan attacked them. He shot up a couple of oil platforms, and he sunk some Iranian naval vessels. I hope the president will put on the table a military option that will restore deterrence, because sanctions are not enough. I give the president a ton of credit for taking Iran on, but this is a defining moment in his presidency. If the Iranians do not change their behavior, if they do not get put back in a box, it's just a matter of time that they're going to break out and have a nuclear weapon, and that changes the world.
That changes everything. The sanctions have been debilitating in terms of their economy. I spoke with Vice President Mike Pence this week, and he said it's working, the pressure campaign. Listen to what he said. I got to get your reaction.
Our maximum pressure campaign is working. The Iranian economy is literally collapsing. The activities in the region regarding oil tankers, their support for Houthis, their continued support for terrorism are all evidence of increasing desperation by the Iranians.
So it's an increasing desperation, Senator, but you want one step further. What kind of a military move do you want to see? Are we going to war with Iran?
Well, if there's an all-out war with Iran, we will win it. That's all bluster. What did Reagan do when Iran acted out? He hit their ship, their Navy, and he hit their oil platforms. We need to punish them economically and militarily. I don't believe we're going to get in an all-out war with Iran, because we know, and they know, that they will lose it. But here's the point. The maximum pressure campaign has crippled the economy, but the Iranians would eat grass if that's what it took to reach their goal of Mideast dominance and to one day to have a nuclear weapon. Why have they struck pipelines? Why have they seized ships? Why have they now attacked the largest oil field in the world under all this pressure? They're trying to break the will of the region. The Europeans are worthless when it comes to Iran. The Arabs don't have the capability. Israel, if they have to, will attack Iran, but Iran would welcome an attack from Israel, but they fear an attack from the United States. I don't want a war with Iran, but I want them to stop. And the only way they're going to stop is to pay a price. And the price I want them to pay is to lose some of their military capability and be hit financially. Their oil refineries, to me, are the perfect target. Deliver a message to the Iranian Ayatollah that on Trump's watch, you're not going to dismember the Mideast.
Can you really make a point to Iran if there are nations that are still working with the Iranians?
Yeah.
What's the story in Europe? Because I know that this president has tried hard for the Europeans to understand the severity of this problem, but Europe still wants to buy their gas or oil from Iran.
Well, Trump has cut that off. We put pressure on the Europeans. If you do business with Iran, you can't do business with us.
Exactly.
He got out of the agreement. Why did the president get out of the Iran nuclear agreement? Because it's a terrible deal. It gave $150 billion to a religious Nazi. He didn't take the money to do better. He took the money to dismember the Mideast. He has a plan for the Mideast. We shouldn't be part of that plan. I don't want Russia, China, and Iran controlling the Mideast. I want the Sunni Arabs aligned with us and Israel to have the dominant voice in the Mideast. So the bottom line, the Iranian regime is going to test this president and the region and the Europeans, and this is a moment of testing. And here's what I'd like to see happen. I'd like to see Trump do to the Iranians what Reagan did, because when Reagan hit them, they stopped. They're not going to war with us. They know they will lose it. But if we don't stop them now, all bets are off in terms of future misbehavior. Yeah. And they believe if the United States will not act, they can get a nuclear weapon, and that's where they're headed.